So good morning and welcome to Blue Point Yoga Center coming from Lynn's dining room. This is Yoga Over 50 and we will begin. We'll begin seated today, which we don't usually do. And if you don't like to be seated for a while, it would be perfectly okay if you began lying down instead. That'll be all right. So either make yourself comfortable lying down or make yourself comfortable in a seated position. If you're sitting on the floor, have a little prop under the hips if that lets you feel more at ease. Lets you sit with a little forward tip to the pelvis and the natural inward and then outward curves of the back. So I'll just talk as if you were sitting. You can have your legs crossed, but you don't have to have your legs crossed. Just take any comfortable seated position where you can feel your weight going solidly into the floor. And you can feel the rest of your body stretching upward away from the floor and toward the ceiling. Draw your attention inward, closing your eyes or softening your gaze, not looking at anything in particular, so that you can pay the most attention to sensations that are coming from within you rather than those from your outside environment. Have a little check around. See if you can notice tension in any part of your body. Just to become aware of it, not to criticize it in any way. Maybe to direct your breath there, letting it flow in and out. See if that attention allows the tension to dissolve. Bring your attention to your breath. Now paying attention to the sensations that you're coming from your body, mostly from your torso, but maybe from other parts of your body too, as you breathe in and breathe out. See if you can feel the movement not only in the front of your body, but also to the back. And we tend to think of the breathing as happening above the waist, which is where the lungs are, of course. But actually, the motions of breathing take place all the way throughout the torso from the pelvic floor up to the throat. So see if you can pay some attention to the sensations from the below the waist portion of the torso as well as you breathe in and breathe out. Perhaps a little relaxation across the back of the hips as you breathe in. If you're sitting, maybe a little pressing down of the pelvic floor as you breathe in and a little rebound as you breathe out. And notice whether as you're sitting, you might be able to sit up just a little bit straighter. Maybe with the shoulders a little bit more toward the back of your body. Adjust your hands so that your shoulders can be in line with your hips and your elbows just hanging underneath the shoulders. So the body's relaxed but tall. So today what I want to do is to pay some attention to one of the classic dualities in yoga, which is the balance between effort and ease. And in particular, to call some attention to places where exerting a little extra effort might create some more opportunity for ease in various postures, and particularly in places where you're bearing weight, whether it's on your hands and arms or whether it's on your legs and your feet. And we'll also pay a little bit of attention to oppositional movements of the muscles, that is, contracting muscles that are sort of antagonists to another muscle opposite that one, and to see if that allows ease. So the quadriceps muscles at the front of the thighs and the hamstrings in the back of the thighs would be one example of that we'll investigate a little bit. As always, the practice is yours to adjust as suits you, so you mind your own body and your own sense of what's right for you. So let's do a little warm up here. So first, let's do a few motions of the spine. So on an exhale, we're going to turn the tailbone under, give a bit of a stretch along the back, not a big hunching of the back, but just pressing the small of the back behind you. And then on an inhale, the other way, pressing the tailbone to the back, stretching along the front of the spine, maybe a little rising of the chest, a little rising of the chin here, and then back the other way. So just move back and forth a few times between a mini cow and a mini cat in a seated position. So we're inhaling for the cow back and exhaling for the cat back. When you do the cat back, see if you can especially emphasize broadness across the shoulder blades rather than a big sort of pooching out between the shoulder blades. And then settle that down to what's a neutral position for you. And let's just have a little stirring around, but first recross the legs so that you have a different leg on top or out front. And you can just lightly place your hands on your thighs or on your knees. So we'll make the cow back sort of stretching forward between the legs, and then we're going to keep stretching while reaching out over the right knee and back around, maybe a little behind the hips, and then out around to the other side and over the left knee and back to the front. And then we'll come back where we came from and keep stretching, kind of creating that cow back with an opening along the front of the vertebrae all the way around and back to the front, and then gather the abdominal muscles to sit yourself back upright again. And now let's inhale the arms up along the sides of the head. You can leave them out to the side a little bit. Palms facing in is good for a little space in the shoulders, and then switch the palms and press them down to the sides, and then scoop them up again on an inhale, and exhale to press them down. And now scoop them up on an inhale and let your right arm drop and reach extra from your left sits bone up through your left fingertips, opening the left side of the body, letting your breath travel there, but not crimping into the right side. So kind of going up and over, keeping your arm and your head back in line with your torso. And then inhaling back upright with both arms overhead, and letting the left arm drop, stretching from the right sits bone through the right fingers, again up and over, not making a big crimp in the left side of your body as you expand the right side. And inhale yourself back upright again, exhale the arms back down to the sides, recross the legs again. And now let's inhale the arms overhead, create a very long spine in the center, a long spine, but not an arched spine. So just the neutral curves of the spine, and then keeping that neutral and tall spine, turn toward your left. And then allow the arms to drop, one coming in front of you and one behind. You can tent the fingers a little bit to remind yourself to stay in a strongly upright position here. And now let's let the right ear drop toward the right shoulder, so your head is going sort of behind you. And you can move your left arm around a little bit and away from your body to experiment with the stretch that comes on the side of the neck and the top of the shoulder. You could bring your hands back toward your forearm for a little extra and a little different stretch there. And then bring the head back up to the center. And now let your left ear drop toward your left shoulder. And once again, with that right arm behind you, you could bring it up off the floor and move it more toward the front and more toward the back of your body, and also give a little extension at the wrist to experience more of a stretch along your hands and your fingers. And then let the hand come down and the head back upright again. And we'll inhale the arms back overhead and turn through the center with a very tall spine, and then go the other way toward the left, letting one arm fall in front and one behind, tending the fingers to keep a tall spine, and also to keep broad shoulders here. So broad shoulders are coming toward the back of the body, the back shoulder helping you to turn a little bit more perhaps, but not necessary. And now let's let the left ear drop toward the left shoulder, so the head's kind of coming toward the back of your body. And then you just make an experiment with the arm in front, so the right arm, moving it a little more forward and a little more back, maybe some extension at the wrist, flexing the fingers back toward the forearm, and then bring the head back up to the center. Remind yourself to keep a tall spine here, and then let the right arm, right ear, drop toward the right shoulder. And we'll again make a little experiment with the arm that's behind you, moving it around a little bit, see how that changes the stretch along the top of the neck. Drawing the fingers back toward the forearm, a little different stretch. And then bring the head back upright again. Inhale the arms overhead, turn back to the front, and let the hands come down to your sides. Now let's bring the legs out in front. So we'll bring them out. Maybe you want a little different proppage under the bum for this. I think I want a little less proppage under the bum for this. So we'll bring the legs out to the front. And when you bring your legs out to the front, you might discover that the little inward curve at the waist that you had when sitting cross-legged has disappeared. If that's the case, a couple things to try. One is to elevate the hips a little more, and another is to allow a little bend to the knees. And that can be helpful in releasing the pelvis so that it can keep its little bit of forward roll and have a little inward curve at the spine. I'll turn to the side here. So that would be perfectly good adaptation, is to allow your knees to retain a little bit of a bend. So we'll sit tall here, and we'll just have a little pointing and flexing through the ankles. So bringing the toes back toward the shins, and then pointing out away, point straight away as much as you can, so that both the inner and the outer edge of the foot are going away from you in a more or less equal proportions. Yep, kind of warm up the hamstrings a little bit. And when you bring your toes back toward your shins, see if you can use your quad muscles, the muscles at the front of the thighs, to sort of press your legs down into the floor a little bit. See how that feels along the hamstrings. So if we use the quad muscles in a position where the hamstrings are already under a little tension, sometimes that encourages the hamstrings to the opposing muscles to give a little more freedom of movement. So just make an experiment to see if that might be able to happen. If as you tense your quads, you could feel a little more freedom along the back of the legs, maybe a little more ability to tip the pelvis forward and have a tall spine. And then we'll let that go. And now bring the legs out to the sides. We'll sit tall here. So maybe feeling a little stretch at the inner thigh. Again, a tall spine. You can let your fingers come behind you and let that remind your spine to have length, including up through the back of the neck, out through the top of the head. And then maybe, and keep the toes pointing up toward the ceiling here. So sometimes the feet want to kind of roll out to the side. Let's keep them active. So we have a little bit of flexion at the ankle, the toes coming back toward the shins, and the legs are kind of pressing down into the floor here. And press through your fingers to take a little roll of the pelvis forward, and then relax that. And at the same time, use a little muscle in front of the thighs, the quadriceps, to create a little pressing down of the back of the legs, maybe a little release of the hamstrings here in this position. And then let's bend at the knees and bring the soles of the feet together in a bound angle position. Maybe it make more sense if I sit to the front. Well, maybe not. I'll stay here. So we'll sit again, sit as tall as you can here. You can have your feet some distance away from you, that'd be all right. You could have them in tighter to your body if you like. You can have the soles of the feet all the way pressed together, inside edge and outside edge, or you could let your feet open up kind of like a book with the inside edge of the feet a little away from each other. Move your hands behind you, and we'll just give a little experiment here with pressing with the hands to roll the pelvis and see if that lets the knees drift a little farther apart from each other. And then you can relax that. And then we'll try that again. Roll the pelvis, press into the hands. See if that lets the inner thighs relax a little bit. You can press into the pelvis and lift your bum and see if you can move your bum a little closer to your feet and still have an upright posture. Just an experiment, right? And now bring your knees up to the center. Switch back the other way. This will make more sense. And bring your knees kind of far apart. You can tent your fingers behind you again. And we're just going to take some sways of the knees, bringing one knee to drop in toward the floor, then bringing it back up to the center, and then the other knee dropping in. You don't have to do anything very extreme here. Just keep this is mobility, not particularly flexibility at the moment. So just making some big motions with the big muscles moving out of the main joints. And back to the center and walk your feet back together. Switch the other way. And let's do just a little bit of a boat pose here. I think it's all kind of roughed up here. So I use the blanket because my tailbone does not like to sit on the floor. It has an injury, a permanent injury, unfortunately. So you can have your hands a little behind your thighs, but the important part is to keep your tailbone tipping out behind so that you have a neutral position of the spine, tall chest, broad shoulders. And we're going to just tip backward a little bit. You can have your legs close to your body, or you could have them further away. You're using the muscles of the torso to keep the belly up toward the thighs. And we'll just tip back a little bit. You can leave the hands holding behind the thighs, or you could bring your arms out to your sides. But keep the tailbone sticking out toward the back and keep the spine stretching long. So it doesn't matter how far you go back. You're using your core muscles, trying to use them a little more than the muscles at the front of the hips. Also keeping breathing. And then gather your core muscles to bring yourself back upright again. And take a little swish of the knees from side to side. And then bring your legs around so you can come to a hands and knees position. So we did a little looking for release by using some muscle tension in the seated warm-up that we did, but now we'll especially try to use these tactics here for a hands and knees position where we're bearing weight on the arms. And I'll face this way for the moment while I'm talking about the hands a little bit, but I don't really want to be off my mat like that. So let me see if this will work out. My knees back here, and then I can have my hands on my mat. Okay. So we've got the knees under the hip joints. We've got the hands so that the wrists are under the shoulders, maybe a little head of the shoulders. And now your wrists might be feeling a little cranky. So let's try pressing into the hands, pressing into the pads at the base of the fingers, pressing down with the thumb and the forefinger and the pads at the base of those fingers especially, not too wide with the little finger, and also giving a little traction of the hands toward each other. So we're creating some muscle activity here that, to my perception, eases the wrists quite a bit. So paradoxically, pressing down harder creates more ease for the wrists. You can take a break anytime you want here. Let your hips come back over your heels, or just sit up into a kneeling position if you feel the need to give a little release for the hands and the wrists. So we're pressing into the pads at the base of the fingers, we're pressing into the thumb and the forefinger side of the hand, we're actively stretching along the arms from the wrists up to the shoulder, to not humping up between the shoulders, but making the arms long and strong, drawing the hands toward each other, which tends to square up the front of the shoulders along the collarbones. And now we're going to do a couple things that sound quite contradictory, but they work out. So the back of your arms, which Linda likes to call the bat wings, let them come toward each other, which would tend to make your elbows kind of face out to the front, the eye of the elbow face out to the front. But at the same time as we're doing that with the upper arm, we're also sort of rotating in with the lower arm, bringing that pressure into the inside edge of the hand. So with two opposite things going on at once, we're trying to create some strength to support the elbow here for a little greater feeling of ease. So just experiment a little bit with that. And then give yourself a rest. Coming back into an extended child's pose could be nice. You can reach the arms out to the front. Let your head rest. If it comes down, you could use your hands to stack under your head if you need a better prop for your head. Take a few relaxed breaths here. You can also bring your arms back alongside your body or over the small of your back for a little bit of a break. And now we'll bring the arms back out, let the weight roll forward into a hands and knees position again. And now let's pay some attention to the role of the position of the body between the shoulders. So what I want to talk about here is not sort of dumping into the joints. So we've just talked about how to use the muscles in the hands and the arms to provide support for the wrists and for the elbows. And now let's talk a little about the shoulders. So we don't want to be kind of hunched down between the shoulders, nor do we want to be stretched way up away from the shoulders. Instead, we want to be kind of square in the shoulders. So the collarbones are kind of drawing forward for a more spacious feel through the shoulders. And now let's move down into the core. So we're not going to just relax and let the belly slump down, nor are we going to create a big arching of the spine. I'm not going to make a big arching of the spine, but we are going to give some tone through the belly muscles to support the spine all the way from the tailbone and stretching out through a long back of the neck and through the top of the head. And let's exhale and rock back into an extended child's pose, stretching under. And inhale and roll forward, give traction with the hands, open the front of the chest in a mini cow, and exhale and fold back. And inhale and come forward. So now we're going to do a little bit of spinal balancing, starting with just the legs. And what's going to be a little different here is to really pay some attention to pressing into the hands and pressing into the supporting knee, the shin if it's on the floor, and the top of the foot. So first, before we raise any feet away from the floor, press the tops of your feet into the floor so that you can feel both the inside and the outside edge of the top of the foot. And then on an inhale, bring your right leg back behind you, stretch it out with the toe pointing down, leading out with the heel, and press very purposefully into both your hands and into the supporting leg. That's your left knee and shin and foot that's on the floor. And look for a very strong, long line there. And exhale that one back down. Square yourself in the middle again, pressing into both knees and feet and both hands, sets of fingers. And now inhale to bring your left leg back in the same way. And keep pressing down into both hands, and especially press into your supporting knee and foot to keep yourself steady there. And exhale back down. And now we're going to take away some of the means of support, bringing the right leg back and then the left arm out alongside the ear, or it could just tent down with the fingers on the floor. And press especially into the supporting hand. Use the fingers, use the inside of the hand, use the top of the foot and the knee and the shin on the supporting leg. Exhale that raised pair back down and come to the other side, bringing the left leg back and the right arm out, pressing, consciously using the inside edge of the hand, consciously using the top of the foot, pressing the toes into the floor to see if you can find a point of stability here. And exhale back down. Let your hips sink back over your heels. Take a long stretch, reaching out with the fingers. Let your head rest. If you like, you can bring your arms back along your sides or over the small of your back for a little break. And then come back up to hands and knees. We're going to do a little bit of lunging here. So bring your right foot forward between your hands. Now, if there's not space to bring it up under your body, you could bring it around to the outside and kind of walk it in. You could bring yourself up to a kneeling position and then bring your knee forward. Or if you have something to prop your hands on, like blocks or some facsimile of blocks, you could use that if you need a little more space under there to get your knee forward. So we're going to bring the right knee in between the hands. Keep the spine stretching long. You could leave just kind of a square shape underneath your legs, or you could slide the left knee back so that you're more on the top of your knee rather than smack on the kneecap. And now you have more of a sort of a long triangle shape under your legs. Either one will be fine. And let your weight kind of sag down toward the floor. Feel how that is. And then draw back a little bit. So activate the muscles by pressing into the knee on the back leg, the shin, the top of the foot on the back leg, pressing the toes into the floor on the back leg, and press into the front foot, especially the inside edge of the front foot. So give some support. It'll back you out of the stretch a little bit, but create a little more ease, a better support for the joints here. And then keep pressing into all those places and see if it might be possible to bring your hands up to your thigh and to raise your torso upright. You're welcome to keep your hands on your thighs, or if you're feeling steady without them, you could bring them to cactus arms here or to warrior arms. And if you're still feeling steady, you could open along the top of the chest and create a small back bend here. I don't want to tip my head too far back or my headphones will fall off. And then bring yourself back upright again. You can bring your hands back down to the thigh and then to the floor. And we'll tuck the back toe and come up into a little bit of a kind of runner's lunge position here. And then put the weight into your hands and to your toe so that you can slide the front foot back to meet the back foot and then hinge yourself back to come to a down dog position. And now all the things about the hands and the wrists that we were talking about in hands and knees also apply here. So the pressing into the pads of the fingers, the extra use of the inside of the hand, drawing the hands toward each other to square up the shoulders, the part about pressing away from the floor so that you aren't sinking into your shoulders, bringing the backs of the upper arms toward each other at the same time as you're rotating the lower arms the other way. All those things apply. Give a little deep bend to the knees and then straighten. Now take a break whenever you like. You don't have to stay up and down dog. Just come down to a child's pose or another restful position to take a break and then pick it up again. Now with the legs, we could do a similar thing to what we were doing sitting with legs outstretched on the floor, which is with the legs more or less straight. Let's try a little of tension in the quads, the muscles at the front of the thighs. See if that tips the pelvis and stretches the hamstring a little bit. So let's try that a few times. See what happens. And now let's take a break for the hands and the arms by bringing the knees down and taking another child's pose, any kind that you like. And plant your hands and let your weight rock forward again, back to the hands and knees, so that we can then bring the left foot forward, however it needs to get there in between your hands. And again, you can have either kind of a square shape under your legs, where you can slide the back knee further toward the back and have more of a triangle shape under your hands. So let yourself kind of sag down, just feel how that feels, and then start really activating all of the things that are pressing into the floor. It might include your hands, but you might not have enough weight in your hands to really feel that. So press into your front foot, especially the inside edge. Press into your back, knee, shin, and the top of the back foot, including the inside and the outside edge of the toes. And let that back you a little bit out of the lunge, but give better support through the joints. Taking a long stretch there, and keep that pressing going on to give you a firm base so that you might be able to bring your torso upright. Keep pressing for stability. If you feel steady, take one or both hands off your thighs. Cactus arms or warrior arms could be fine. If you're still feeling steady, keep pressing into the feet, keep pressing into the top of that back foot. Maybe a little bit of a back bend here. And come back upright and let the hands come back down. Plant the hands, tuck the back toe, coming temporarily up into sort of a runner's lunge. And then let your front foot slide back to meet your back foot. And take another down dog for the moment. Make it a fairly long down dog so that you aren't making like a forward fold here. You really got some distance between your hands and your feet, and use all those principles of the pressing into the thumb and the forefinger side of the hand and drawing the hands toward each other, giving a little tension to the quadricep muscles to roll the pelvis forward and experience a little more ease to the hamstrings. And then we're going to bend the knees, walk the hands back toward the feet. Let your hands start to run up your legs and your legs start to straighten. Then give a little bend to the knees, bring the hands to the heart, press through the feet, and slowly stand up. Okay. So we'll come to a standing mountain position. So we'll find the joints of the hips and line up the joints of the legs and the long axis, the long bones of the legs and the feet, more or less under those points. And now we're going to really press down through the feet. So we're going to press down through the inside edge of the feet, excuse me, and the outside edge, and the pads at the base of the toes, and the pads at the heels. Maybe give a little outward traction at the heels, make some space across the back of the hips. And now I'm going to turn sideways so that we can explore a little bit about alignment and finding the most ease in a standing mountain position. So a rather common posture these days is for people to lock out their knees, shift their hips forward, and have kind of an extra sway in the back and the hips sort of pressing forward, kind of hanging into the front of the hip joints, and that's often accompanied by a bit of rounding of the shoulders and a forward posture of the head. But even just this part at the lower part of the body puts a lot of strain on the lower part of the back. I got into some big trouble for myself by taking this posture unconsciously while I was using my iPad and my laptop at the kitchen counter and resting my hips, the front of my hips against the counter. No good. So try drawing your hips back so some weight comes into your heels, letting your Hips center over more or less the rear part of your feet rather than the front of your feet, so you might feel a little lighter in the toes than you did before. And the shoulders can align over the hips. And press through the feet once again, check again, inside edge, outside edge, cross the base of the toes into the heels. And see if that pressing will let you feel steady and will let actually your torso feel a little more relaxed. Turn the palms forward a moment, broadening across the chest. Let the lower arms relax. Long through the back of the neck, as if you were being pulled from the place where your hair comes from at the back of your head. And look for some ease here. So we're looking for ease while still maintaining this activity of the pressing down of the feet, and then also of the sort of drawing up along the legs, along the torso, along the back of the neck. Just take a few breaths here. And now let's take a wide-legged stance. So you might want to use the the length of your mat for this. So we'll step to the side, take a comfortably wide-legged stance. And here I want to especially pay attention to the support that the ankles and the knees need in this position. So you're going to experiment with letting your weight roll to the inside of your feet and roll to the outside of your feet. Notice that puts some stress on both the knees and the ankles if you get too far rolled out or too far rolled in. So we're going to press into both the inside and the outside edge of the feet and the pads of the base of the toes and the pads at the heels. We're going to shift the weight a little back toward the heels for the moment. And we're also going to just draw the thighs a little bit in toward each other. So as if you're kind of trying to squeeze the triangle that your legs are making just a little bit narrower. And see if that makes a nice solid base of support here. And bring the hands to the crease of the hips and hinge forward. You might like to have a chair if you don't want to bring your hands all the way down to the floor. You can let your hands rest on the legs, but don't press your knees out to the back, because that's another thing we want to give a little attention to here. So now I'm going to turn the other way. So we're going to hinge forward and keep the spine long. So we've got the little inward curve at the waist part of the back. If your hands can come to the floor, if you can rest them out on a chair, you could do that. And now let's have a little experiment with the legs. Tightening the quad muscles, see if that lets your pelvis tip and the back of the legs lengthen a little. So just a little experimenting with that. And as you're experimenting with that, don't lose track of what your feet are doing to support your ankles and your knees, pressing into the inside and outside edge. And now we're going to bring the hands back up to the hips. So press into the feet, inside edge and outside edge, and draw the thighs a little toward each other, and use that drawing of the thighs, squeezing the thighs together to help give the strength of the base to bring your spine back upright again. And let your feet walk back in toward each other. And we'll just take a little loose swish. And now I think I'll turn this side way. So we'll start in a standing mountain position. We're going to step back to warrior one. So you can bring the hands to the heart. Do all those setup things, pressing into the inside and outside edge of the feet. A little outward traction at the heels, bringing the hips back a little bit toward the heels. The weight comes a little bit back toward the heels. Take a generous step back with your right foot, land on the toe, and then turn the heel in a bit. Let the front knee bend. Plant the front foot. Bring your torso upright so that you have the shoulders over the hips. You can check that by letting your arms hang down to the sides. Your torso is a little rotated so that you bring your shoulders square to the front of the mat. And now let's pay some attention to the support that's we're getting here from the feet. So especially the back foot, press into the outside edge. You can feel the ankle roll out a little, press into the inside edge, feel the ankle roll in a little. Well, we don't want it rolling out or in, both for the sake of the ankle and for the knee. So see if you can press into both the inside and the outside edge of the back foot. And on the front foot, where the knee is traveling straight out down the middle of the front foot, press into the pad at the base of the big toe to make a strong base of support there. And if that weren't enough, see what happens if you give a little draw back with the front hip, that's your left hip, a little draw forward with the right hip. We're not squaring the hips, not aiming to do that, just putting a little bit of muscle tension on them for stability here. And then let's do a few things with the arms. We can sweep them up overhead, turn the palms in, hinge at the hips, lean forward into an arrow lunge. Keep that pressing into the feet going on here for stability. Inhale, back upright again. Bring the hands to the heart. Pause a moment here. Look for that strong base. And you might think, well, I got all these muscles working, so this is a lot more work than it ought to be. But on the other hand, maybe it also feels a lot more steady and in that way more restful than it might otherwise for the joints. And step back forward to the standing mountain position. Feel free to take a little bob, a little break. And then come back to that very well supported standing mountain pose. We'll bring the hands to the heart and step straight back, a generous step with the left foot, and let the heel turn in on the back foot. Front knee bends, torso rotated to square the shoulders to the front of the mat. And now press into the outside of the back foot, the inside of the back foot. Settle that down so that you can feel that your ankle is supported from both the inside and the outside, and your knee is supported along both sides as well. Press into the pad at the base of the big toe, especially on the front foot. Give that little bit of tension motion through the hips, drawing the front hip a little bit to the back hip a little to the front. Maybe a little squeezing of the thighs together here too. For a very solid warrior one. Sweep the arms out overhead, bring the palms to face in toward each other, or you can have cactus arms if you prefer. And we'll hinge at the hips and take an arrow lunge here, leading from the back heel. Keep that back foot situated so it has pressure into the back of the back foot as well as the front. And inhale back upright again. And bring the hands together and down to the heart. And step back forward. Okay, so now we're gonna do a little bit of balance pose here. So just pretty plain and simple, tree pose. So we'll start in a standing mountain position. And the thing we're gonna pay the most attention to is the support that you're getting from your standing leg, from the muscles on the outside of the leg that control the hip from kind of pooching out to the side as you stand on that. So let's begin. We'll press into both feet in the standing mountain position. And then shift the weight into your left foot. And as you shift your weight into your left foot, let your hip slide out and then slide that hip back in. Just kind of get an idea. You can put your hand on the outside of the hip so you can feel the muscles working to shift your weight in. And as you shift your weight in, also shift your weight a little bit toward the heel. Keep pressing into all parts of that standing foot. We'll just come up onto the toe and the ball of the foot on the right foot, and then turn the knee and the toes out to the side. Doesn't have to be a ton out to the side, just a little would be fine. You could stand your heel of your unweighted foot against the shin of the standing foot, or if you'd like to bring your foot up higher on your leg, you can do that. Keep the motion going with the standing leg's hip, so the left hip drawing in and the weight coming back toward the heel. Whoa, this is I've got a lot of mats under me, so this is Tippy, but I think I'm just going to keep it that way. It's a bit of a challenge. You can do whatever you like with your arms. You can bring them out. Maybe the arms help you balance. Maybe you wave the arms around a little bit as a little extra challenge to the balance. Keep thinking about keeping the support of that hip. Keep thinking about pressing into the standing foot. And also think about pressing, if you've raised your foot or if you just have the heel of your unweighted foot against your standing leg, keep pressing those two things together to keep a solid base of support. And see if you can find some ease in tree pose. Sometimes it's hard to find ease in a balancing pose because you've got so many worries about falling over, and that's where standing near a wall or maybe putting a finger onto a chair or onto a wall can be helpful. So just a little experiment with that. I'm going to create a little fatigue in the standing leg, but not too much. And then we'll go to the other side. So start in the standing mountain position. Press into the inside and outside edges of the feet, pads at the base of the toes, pads at the heels. Shift the weight into your right leg this time. Put your hand on the outside of your right hip. Just feel how it is to let that hip kind of sag out to the side versus to draw it in underneath you. I'm going to create a little nice base of support by drawing the hip in a bit and moving the weight a little back toward the heel. Let the unweighted foot and knee turn out to the side. Just rest your heel against the standing leg if you like, or you can bring your leg further up onto your foot, unweighted foot up onto the standing leg. Draw the standing leg's hip in toward the center. Press the standing leg and the raised foot or heel toward each other. You can try different arm positions. You can try moving your head around. You can try closing your eyes, which is hard. And again, keep thinking about the support that you're giving to that standing hip, standing knee and ankle. Woo. And when you've done experimenting on that side, come back down and pause in a very solid standing mountain position for a moment. And bring the hands to the heart, let the eyes close. Press the feet into the floor. Think of drawing up along the legs, along the torso, through the back of the neck, out through the top of the head. Let your breathing settle a bit. Create a little ease here. Okay, so we're going to come back toward the floor. So let's inhale the arms overhead and exhale, hinge forward from the hips. Keep that long spine. Let your hands run down your legs. Let's let them run down. Maybe give that little experiment. Well, we'll let them run down and then let's let them run back up again. Create that L shape. And here in this L shape, try that quadriceps thing of tensing the quadriceps and see if that tips the pelvis, creates a little more stretching along the hamstrings. And then exhale and let your hands slide down your legs, let your knees bend, bring your hands to the floor, walk the feet back into down dog. Just pause there to recreate the pressing into the inside edge of the hand, the pressing into the pads at the base of the fingers, little tension of the quadriceps to tip the pelvis. And then let your weight roll forward to a plank position, any kind of plank that you like. Could be with knees down, could be full plank, could be just a hands and knees position. And then we're going to come to a prone position on the floor. So lower yourself down in any manner that works for you until you're lying on your belly. So we're just going to, for the moment, let the arms rest out to the side. You can rest your chin or your forehead on the floor in order to have your head in line with the spine. Stretch your legs out behind you. And we're going to do a little bit of Cobra here. And first, we're just going to pay attention to pressing into the top of the feet
whatever part of your legs are resting on the floor, so top of the shins and the knees, the pubic bone, press down there. Inhale, stretch forward, lengthening your spine away from your waist, and let that lengthening carry your upper body away from the floor. Your face is still facing down toward the floor. You can leave your hands down on the floor, or you can bring them up off the floor, drawing your elbows toward the back of your body. So we have a very firm anchor for the legs for this little cobra. And lower down. And let's do that again. Pressing through the legs and the tops of the feet very purposely, and stretching forward on an inhale, and let the stretching forward carry you up. So not a great big kind of crimping up, but more of a stretching forward that takes you up away from the floor. And then exhale back down. You can put your hands under your head for a moment and take a little swish of the legs from side to side. And now, keeping that pressing down of the legs, we're going to add another little thing. So give a little clearing of the throat, like and feel the belly muscles, the lower abdominal muscles bounce away from the floor. And we're going to use those to create protection and ease for the small of the back. So we'll press the legs in the front of the feet, top of the feet into the floor. Exhale to activate those abdominal muscles, and then inhale and stretch forward to the baby cobra. You could bring your hands to the mat, and if you like, take a little bigger cobra, but keep that tension in the belly muscles so that you don't take a big crimp into the small of the back and raising further away from the floor. And then you can lower back down, and we'll just try this again. So you can take as big a cobra as you like, but think about pressing down into the feet and gathering up the lower abdominal muscles to keep from getting too big a bend in the waist part of the spine. So have a baby cobra or a teenager cobra or a king cobra, whatever you like. If you're going for a king cobra, bring your hands back so that there will be under your shoulders when you come up. So we're going to press the legs down, activate the abdominal muscles, inhale to draw forward, maybe press with the arms, maybe bring yourself further up, maybe even press into the feet and bring the front of the hips and the thighs up off the floor in an upward facing dog, but all the while keeping the protection to the small of the back with the core muscles. And let yourself back down again. And let your hands be a little pillow for the head, and bend at the knees, and take a little bit of a swish from side to side. And lower the legs, and let's just do one more. Any size cobra that you like, or an up dog if you prefer that. But think about the support that you're giving through your feet and whatever part of your legs and your lower belly are on the floor, and also think of the support that your abdominal muscles can give to the small of the back so as to not put stress on the small of the back. So this is not a very easeful sort of thing, but we are looking for ease. So press into the feet, gather the belly muscles together, inhale for whatever size cobra or up dog you might like. Keep breathing regardless of what you're doing. If you can't breathe, you probably are not finding ease. And lower yourself back down again. Pillow your head again. Let your knees be kind of wide and take a real generous wriggling, letting the legs go from side to side, letting the hips come one up off the floor and then the other up off the floor for a little rotation through the spine. And bring your legs back down and back together and turn over onto your back. And we'll just take one little stretch here before Shavasana. So lie on your back with your knees bent, your feet flat, And then bring your knees in toward your chest. Let them span your chest so they're really coming toward their respective armpits. You can just hold loosely behind the thigh. See if you can leave your tailbone mostly down on the mat, and then open at the knees so that your feet stretch up toward the ceiling. Now, if when you open your knees, it starts to drag your tail away from the floor, don't worry about it, just kind of notice. And you don't have to open very far at the knees. You can hold behind the thighs, or you can reach up to your shins or reach up to your feet for a happy baby position if you like. And we'll just take a few gentle rolls, kind of falling to one side, feeling the pressure on the outside edge of your back. And then roll over to the other side, feel a little pressure on the outside edge of that side. And come back to the center and let your legs fold down and hold your knees with your hands and roll over so that you're hanging on the edge of your back, so you're not falling over, but you can kind of feel the back of one hip, and then use your hands to move your knees in and out a little. It's a little bit of a massage. And then pack through the center and roll onto the other side. And do that on this side. Just move your knees in and out a little bit. It makes a little massage, especially for the back and the outside edge of your hip, and then come back to the center and take whatever Shavasana position appeals to you. You could leave your feet flat and your knees bent, or you could have your legs outstretched or propped up on a chair or a blanket or up a wall. So make yourself comfortable here. So we're going to stop making an effort at this point. No effort now, just making yourself comfortable so that you can then be very still. Let everything rest. Let your breath settle down. Check that you're giving the exhalation its full due. Check your jaw. Make sure that your teeth are parted a little bit. Your tongue is just resting behind your teeth. Check the muscles of your face, your eyes. Check your hands. See if they can uncurl, rest with the back of the palms on the floor. Now let your breathing become a little deeper. Again, a little wiggling of the fingers and the toes. Feel a little movement of the hands and the feet. Bring one knee at a time in close to your chest. Take a little roll side to side. Let that roll you onto one side so that you can rest there for a few breaths with your eyes closed, cradling your head. Then use your arms on an exhale to push yourself from the floor. The head can kind of drag behind.
Take any kind of seated or kneeling position that would be comfortable just for a minute. So as we did earlier, sit a little forward on the sits bones, letting the weight go into your legs, into the front of your sits bones, letting your shoulders drift back over your hips, length through the whole spine, up through the back of the neck, out through the top of the head. Bring the palms together and the thumbs near the breastbone, and we'll close with one Om. Let your belly relax to inhale first. Om. Thank you for sharing your practice together today. It's great to see everybody on the small screens. I hope you're all doing well. Namaste.